You're listening to Unfiltered Brew, hosted by Master Cicerone Joe Vogelbacher and brewery founder Eric Flanagan, out of the Sugar Creek Brewing Company in Charlotte, North Carolina.
Well, hey everybody, it's been a while since we've done our podcast, and it's good to be back here and kind of catch you up with what's going on at Sugar Creek and kind of in the minds of Eric and I as we navigate this business through our 10th year. I think the big thing that I'm excited about is that the rebrand that we have coming for the Big O, which is our lead dog. You want to talk a little bit about that, Eric?
Not really. We've been talking about it for 6 years now. But it's been it's just interesting when you've got a bestseller and you know it's the bread and butter of your company. Anytime you think about changing a color or a pack tech or a gloss or a semi-coat, it's just scary. So, Joe and I probably talked about rebranding this product for years, but the craft market also went through so much too. Seasonal one-offs that you'll never see again, and just throwing shit at the wall, I guess, is what a lot of people say. But when the market heated up that fast, it seems like so did the brands that we had. So next thing you know, we had Unlimited Juice and all these other brands. So it's been nice lately to kind of sit back and rebrand, and I think we kind of took all the things that we've learned over this past 10 years and kind of put it all on paper and then got it onto the can. So I'm fairly happy with it. How about you?
No, I really like it. I think the thing that's a lot of people don't realize is that in order to spin up a big product or a product and put it out into all over the Carolinas, you have to have all the inventory and the raw materials to make that product. And so, getting a can like our original Big O here, which we've had for a while, which is about 60% of our volume in the stores, this can, you have to get a plate made at the canning company, and these plates are expensive. I think they're between $1,500 and $2,000 a piece. And then the plate is what rolls out the design on the can, and then you're limited because the can has that silver hue to it. So if you look closely at our original Big O, you'll see the silver hue popping through and with the design kind of in mind. And I don't know if Erica can talk about this a little bit more, but our original idea with this can was there's a lot of gears on it and it has a much busier look than our new rebrand. But the gears were supposed to be textured originally. So when you pick up the can and you can feel it kind of in your hand, a textured finish. But the amount of cans that we had to buy in order to get the textured was not in the range of normalcy.
That's always the problem in this business is quantity and dollars.
So we kept it that way, and
I'm glad you brought that up, actually.
Sure, and then you have this can which has this nice, pretty gloss finish. It has the Sugar Creek right in the center, and there's just a lot going on in the can. So now we've gone to this, and I think and you did a beautiful job on this where the customer will still know. It's really, really scary. I have to agree with you, because here you have something that's so important to driving revenue for the business. If you take this off of the shelf where people have been pulling it off for a while and they're like, wait a second, what happened to the Big O? We don't know where it is.
Or they just can't identify it.
And so you can't move the needle too far to the right. If you do, then you're gonna risk totally alienating all your fan base, right? So you have to move the needle, but move it in a way that retains the integrity of the original product. So I think you did a fantastic job with that. It's a lot cleaner, and if you notice, the can on my right is gloss and the can on the left is matte. So nowadays they've revamped the grocery stores where you have these LED lights and it can blind you almost if you have this gloss finish. So I really like it. I think the artwork pops. Do you want to talk a little bit about the details on the can?
So I tell you, we did it for one, not me, and we went through several iterations, and it was just funny to see the original orange pop back up on there. It made me happy because you and I kind of designed it. And I forgot that it was funny, Joe and I sat in the office for a while literally designing this can without artists or any professionals, and I forgot we wanted those gears to be textured.
Yeah.
That would have been awesome if we did that. We were figuring, hey, look, 7% beer. If you get drunk, maybe a little bit of grip on that thing. We're getting like some Nerf technology in there. But yeah, the biggest thing for this one was really just to showcase the Carolinas. We ended up grabbing a lot of our natural elements that we use in everything and throwing it on the can. Over the years, we developed the North and South Carolina clouds. We've always had that maritime steampunk feel. So the balloon fish does good. So we decided to have, if you look in the background, the mountains, we were trying to break it up a little bit. But, we've got Grandfather Mountain in there and all the other mountains that most people around here go to hike. I didn't get Crowder's Mountain in there. I'm sorry.
Wait a second. I didn't realize that's what that is in the background.
Yeah. So Joe clearly doesn't follow our social media. One of our posts was the can spinning. So you could see Grandfather Mountain, then you can see Mount Mitchell, then you could see Table Rock, and then all the other ones. There's a really cool, and then it pinpoints it. So, and then it actually worked out great because we've always used the Wright Brothers logo. And remember before it was on our bottle caps when we were in bottles.
Yep.
But we have just rolled out. If anybody's out in the Outer Banks, we've just rolled the Outer Banks out, which has been phenomenal for us. We really think we'll do good on the coast, but just having the Wright Brothers logo out there really helps because everything out there is Wright Brothers, Wright Brothers, Wright Brothers. And we originally, Joe and I came up with that idea with some of our other employees because you see the Wright Brothers planes. For the people that are not in North Carolina, we're first in flight. The Wright Brothers were here. We were looking for little indicators all over, like, hey, what's going to remind people of Sugar Creek? What's going to remind people of Sugar Creek in their everyday life? And we realized that when you sit in traffic in Charlotte, you see the Wright Brothers plane a lot. So if that ever works one day, that would be great. But
I really like the contrast between the blood orange and the skin of the blood orange, because that's kind of the cool thing where you cut open the blood orange and you're like, whoa, this is really different looking on the inside when you cut open one. And that's captured, I think, really well in this one. The original one kind of looks more like almost like a grapefruit. It does have a lot of grapefruit flavor, but this one I think is closer to that California more.
And you did
blood
drive
orange.
that, and at first I was like, oh man, we're going to have to find another color. We might have to lose a color, but I agree with you. The contrast of, and then even the black, bringing the black in to just sit over the top of everything, but not to bore everybody with labels, but we're pretty excited because now we get to bring all of our styling and all of our brands back into cohesion here. We've got a really solid base here, which is where Hazio comes in, and then the Big Chill, we just launched that. So on the shelf, we'll be a lot more cohesive, a lot less sporadic and crazy like we've been in the past. A lot of times, we've got pumpkin blasters, unlimited juices. A lot of times these breweries, including us, your label usually stems off the liquid. So if you're making a wild beer, you tend to come up with a wild label. And then next thing you know, you're all over the place. So, and like you said, I think people need to be able to identify your brand. So when you've got them all tied together, it really helps people grab all of your products, not just one,
Well, check out the QR code too for those that get to pick up this new one. This is a new thing we've been experimenting with. So you can scan it and you'll get to our YouTube channel, or you'll get to me talking about the beer. And so I'm kind of excited about that because we'll get to see how many scans we have because these things track. So that's kind of a neat new thing that's on the can. But hey, let's talk a second about, so I guess one other thing I want to mention real fast is though we kind of shifted from it being the big blood orange to the Big O, which is what everybody calls our beer anyway, and this kind of refocus on that. It still retains the integrity of the blood orange name at the very top, but more focus on the Big O. So now we go to, the Big Hazy O, talk about that for a second. And that's basically born from the patrons in our tap room here in Charlotte. So what's happened is people that are fans of the Big O notice it's got some of the sweetness from the blood orange that's in there, and it's really, really good punchy fruit flavor. where you have the hazy IPA, where it's more about the hops, the hop aroma, and the esters from the yeast, which gives you that pineapple, tropical, piney, resiny, grapefruit, pithy flavor. And if you blend the two, which they do in the tap room all the time, where you have a blended pint where it's unlimited juice and the Big O, you have now a new concoction. So the idea behind this really is like a 1 + 1 = 3. And it's amazing to see that we put it in the can and that it's going to be out there. And literally all we are doing in the back is taking the Big O, a fresh Big O and a fresh hazy, and blending them 50-50 and then canning it. So you're getting the same experience that you get in the tap room, but now in the can. And it's really been fun to watch the reviews on this, because the reviews are actually even better than each of the beers on their own. So we'll see what happens with it. I'm excited, but I would say it'd be fun to just try to do the blending right now if you want to try one, Eric, and I'll pour it in this glass and we can enjoy it.
That's been my favorite thing to do lately, is because you and I we've been skeptical about trying to get it into a can, and you and I have talked about commercially blending and the best way to do it. And the brewers we've got a great team, so we do a good job with it. But my kids are pretty heavy into soccer, so all the grandparents come over to my house after the soccer games, and we'll grill in the backyard or something. So I have been, my dad and my father-in-law, I've been giving them one beer that's half Big O, half unlimited juice, and then their next beer is usually a hazy O. And then I kind of sit there and wait to see if they can tell the difference between the two. And it's been pretty spot on. I will say, I actually think the commercially blended version is better in this, but it's pretty hard to tell the difference so we'll drink that and then we can crack this and
sure.
And it's almost the same liquid.
Well, it's definitely the same, but the blending ratio will be more exact when we do it. But you know what? I absolutely love these glasses. Just kind of talk about them for a second. This is the Craftmaster glass with the etching on the inside, and this glass, I just think it's amazing. Originally, I believe the shape of it was inspired from the Sam Adams design, where they tried to make something that was really great for an IPA, or great for beer in general, where it captures the aroma the best way. So, the bottom part of it, like this, is supposed to be great for your hand, so you can hold it and not slip. And if you notice, a lot of the different designs on glasses have to do with making it easy to hold when you're out drinking or having a beer with friends.
Or if you get drunk.
Yeah, so it doesn't slip out of your hand. Another thing is that it makes it stackable too, the way they designed it, which is great for the people that using it in the pub. And then you have this little flare at the top. That's kind of like an indication of where the foam can be and sit and rest and still flare out and give you some experience of the aroma there.
And then the bulb for...
Yeah, and then at the bottom of it, if maybe when we edit, we can show that, but there's kind of that little Easter egg, that little nugget in the bottom where we have the Wright brothers plane etched in the bottom. And what that's doing is nucleating the beer. You can't see it because it's so hazy here, but it's nucleating the beer and bringing the bubbles up. So you're always going to have that nice, good foam layer on the top. Again, I love emphasizing the foam layer because that's preventing the beer from getting oxidized. It's releasing the aroma, and it's giving some texture and mouthfeel, all that great stuff. I just love it. So we have some new glasses at Sugar Creek, and I can kind of talk a little bit about them too. But half-liter Pilsner, dimpled Pilsner mugs. There you go, Eric.
All right. So talk about that dimpled Pilsner.
Cheers. Pretty good. Yeah, so this one here.
Let's not sell them the dimpled Pilsner. Let's tell them about it.
Of course.
Where did it come from?
Of course, but one thing I'll mention, which I think we've probably talked about in the podcast before, when we first opened, the idea was inspired by the Belgians, which is just awesome. They have, if you go over there to Brussels or different areas in Belgium, especially Brussels, and you order a beer, it's like they have the most interesting and unique glasses, and each brewery provides that glass for their beer, and they're just awesome. They're made in custom molds, they're gold leafed, they have a unique shape, all of these things. And in some places, actually, the glassware is so expensive and they're afraid that you're going to take it, you have to turn your boot in when you get your glass. So what way it'll work is you get your beer poured, and then you'll take your shoe off, give it to the bartender, and then when you give them back the glass, they give you your shoe. So you see all these people walking around with one shoe. That's one way.
That's funny.
Some people do it. Yeah,
That's more valuable than,
it's expensive, right? So when we first opened, all of a sudden we're one of the first pioneering breweries, I think, in Charlotte that tried to duplicate this 10 years ago, and everybody was stealing our glassware.
Yeah, and we were, despite what any of these breweries say, we're all friends with them, so we'll get a text, but they probably don't watch us anyway. But I remember the one thing you said was, Eric, we can't open this brewery with shaker pints. My dad will kill me. And we didn't. We were one of the first ones. You're right.
Well, so we had unique glassware for all of our beers that we had on draft, and then
with gold foil.
Yeah, and they're just every one of them. People are putting them in their purse, walking out, stealing them left and right, and here we are trying to get open. And I think at the end of the year we tabulated like $35,000 in missing glassware. So this beautiful glass that we're enjoying right now, it's really a shame we can't give that to the patrons of the tap room, because these are for sale, but we don't serve in these regularly because people just steal them.
We do, however, have a special glass for particular beers. And like Joe's saying, we etch the bottom of all of them. So there is branding and there is logo in it. It's just a little hidden thing that also makes the beer experience a little bit better. But unfortunately, we had to drop the logoed stuff.
So about this dimpled pint glass, this is what, and one of the few places I haven't been that it's a classic beer style producer is the Czech Republic, and going to Pilsen. I would love to do that one day, and it's on my bucket list. But this is the kind of glass that you might get if you went to Pilsner Urquell and they were going to pour you from their Luker faucet, where they have a couple different kinds of pours to emphasize the foam and flavor and experience of the Pilsner. So we're going to have one here at Sugar Creek, and we'll be able to bring that same sort of experience with our Czech Pilsner to the guests that come in, so they don't have to go to the Czech Republic to get it, and you can get it right here. But what's one thing that's kind of, again, the dimples are for holding the glass so they don't slip out of your hand. And this mark here, you see it's quite big. This is a 1/2 liter mark. So a 1/2 liter of beer up to this line, and the rest being foam. You don't see this often with pints or glasses in the US, which is always surprising because the customer never knows how many ounces they're getting. But in Europe, it's like weights and measures. Everything is labeled as far as the customer knows how much they're going to get. Now, I can't tell you how many times people tell me when I'm pouring a beer, hey, fill it all the way up to the brim. Like, well, wait a second. It is filled up to the right spot, and you're going to lose out on the foam, which is part of the beer if we fill it all the way to the brim. But anyway, look for these in the tap room. These are kind of cool.
And when are you going to get that?
I'm excited to bring them in. And these aren't cheap either. I think these were like $9 a pop. So
when are you going to get that tap going?
Soon, now, I guess, yeah. And I think these were about $5 a pop. So from an economic standpoint, the unbranded etched ones are about $2 or $1.50 a pop. And then you get something unique and special like this to give a good experience to the guests. They're considerably more expensive. So we'll see how it goes, see if they walk out of the door too. But
those are gone.
In the meantime, well, we got 90 of these.
As long as every now and then we would. I think I was mentioning this in your beer class.
They're a lot bigger, they're a lot harder to stuff in your purse.
They are, and they're heavy. And then as long as at least one nice person mails it back to us with a note. That was one of my favorite things, was getting a stolen glass back and said, I stole this glass, I'm very sorry, and I felt horrible about it much later. Here you go. And I was like, man, so we ended up mailing her a glass back to say thank you for being honest and a good person. But I want to try this one now. So I want them side by side, man.
Oh yeah. Well,
can I have that Luker? What do you call this thing?
Well, this is a dimpled Pilsner glass.
I remember the first time you told me about.
It's really a mug, they call it, but I don't know. It reminds me of a glass that you would see in a English pub where you have these sort of things, but this is what these are durable, they're heavy, they're handy, they hold a full half liter, and this is what you would see in Pilsen if you went over there to get a Pilsner. So
I just love how much farther along European beer drinking culture is than us. And they've been around for hundreds of years because they design for when you get drunk, you don't break it. What was that first glass you ever told me about? That it might even be the Guinness glass, right? Isn't that one designed with that little bit of outward swing?
The Nonic pint glass.
Nonic, yes.
Yeah, the Nonic pint glass has a bubble in it that you'll see, and that's an English bitter glass. And that bubble, you're like, why is there a bubble in the glass? And that's for ease of comfort and holding it. And even wine has this. So you have I'm going to mess this up, the indentation in the bottle of the wine. I think it's called a bunting. A bunt.
You
put your thumb in it, and that gives you good grip on the wine bottle. And then you can pour from that, from the wine like that. Legend has it that they added this so that the sommelier could serve the royalty with one hand, and that way they knew for sure that the king or the queen wasn't going to be poisoned by the sommelier.
I remember you saying that. Yeah. So, no, you told me that. I love that one.
That's kind of a thing, and you see it in some of our beer champagne glasses. Excuse me, champagne bottles. What do you think?
It's better. It's better. It's better out of the can.
Yeah. Well, it's better from the production blend.
Yeah.
Both of these are fresh, so.
Well, I mean, they're about the same. I mean, they taste the same, but for some reason, I feel like this is a.
Yeah, it's funny. Like when you're doing beer and food pairing, that's the whole goal. It's the same as what we got with this beer, where you add the flavor of the food and the components of the food. Think about the way they prepare the food, the flavors in the food, the spices in the food, all of these things. If you could list them out, and then if you could list out what's in the beer, the idea is to match them together so that 1 + 1 = 3, and you get a new experience. And that's what we're doing here really with the Big Hazy O. We're taking the blood orange and the unlimited juice, and now combining them, the flavors interplay in such a good way that the new creation is better than each of the individuals.
You're also people will find out eventually, but we're also messing with the white ale too. You want to talk about that or no?
Sure. I mean, just white ale is one of our first beers that we have here, and
my favorite.
We're gonna
to this day
rebrand it probably, but it's a 4.4% Belgian style wit beer. And when we first opened, we wanted to be as authentic as we possibly could to the original wit beer. It's one of the oldest recipes out there for beer. It goes back to the 1500s. And
we won several awards with this beer.
Yeah.
So it's not changing because it's not good, but easier to drink, right?
Well, you have to understand that what is well made and good for the connoisseur might not be what people want to drink. And that's the hardest thing I think to kind of learn in the beer industry.
It's the hardest thing to swallow too. Yeah. When you know something's perfect the way it is, but not to everybody, you're going, well.
So
I'm not the one buying it either. So
Pierre Celis,
yes,
he's the guy that was behind Hoegaarden, and the idea was he grew up in this town and they were making the Belgian white wit beer, and that's what he loved. And after World War II, it basically started becoming extinct. And he had worked in the brewery, and this is the basic story that I know, and I could be wrong here, but the last brewery that was surviving closed, and he wanted to bring it back and opened up his own brewery, resurrecting the ancient recipe. And he went from there to make Hoegaarden, and then it was eventually purchased by Anheuser-Busch InBev, and then he moved to Texas and opened up Celis Brewing, and it had Celis White, which still kind of kept true to the original sort of wit beer that he grew up and loved and drinking in Belgium. So our idea was, hey, what can we do to to bring that experience to the Carolinas, in which case we knew somebody that worked with Pierre Celis, and we worked with this guy to create the recipe and try to be as authentic as possible. Now, with these wit beers, they're so old. This was before people really used hops in the beer. They were using a mixture of spices called a gruit.
Tell what century, roughly?
So 1500s, right? 1500s. And you weren't using hops. And hops is amazing in beer. It's like one of those things, again, where you have 1 + 1 = 3. Once they figured out that how great hops is with beer, it's just part of beer now. It's in all beer. So even in our wit beer, we use a little bit of hops. But originally, when they weren't using hops or they were hard to get, they were used spices to counteract the sweetness. And the spices used were a secret blend that each brewery would guard and not let out. And eventually, this was something that was assumed by the state. And the state guarded these blends and then taxed the brewer based on how much of this blend they would get and use in their beer. But anyway, long story short is that the white ale that we made, it uses that mixture of spices. And I'll tell you what was in ours. Coriander being the main one, fresh coriander, where we grind the coriander the night before or the day of the brew. Okay, so whole coriander grounded up. And a lot of people don't realize what the coriander seed is. It's the seed of the cilantro plant. That's what coriander is, and it's very citrusy. It's if you turn it into oil and press it, it's 70% linalool oil, right? Very citrusy. And then we have bitter orange peel, sweet orange peel, okay, and then things like grains of paradise, which is a peppercorn, and chamomile flower. So the mixture of these together would make that gruit, and then you add that to the beer and you have this perfumey, citrusy, spicy blend, and it's just unique and delicious, and it had been used for centuries. The problem is that again, with the Belgian strain of yeast, it has the isoamyl acetate, the 4-vinyl glycol, which is banana and clove flavor, okay? On their own. And these are the hallmarks of the Belgian yeast, the banana and clove. And if you notice, the best-selling wit beer, okay, don't have any of the clove. And that would be like Allagash White or Blue Moon or Shock Top. They have none of the clove flavor. And ours kept true to the original, had a little bit of the clove. Well, what happens is if you take the clove flavor and then add linalool oil, which is the oil from the coriander seed, together, these two things make a flavor that beer judges often call ham aroma, or like a
slice of ham,
or like hot dog.
Oh boy, that's
so you have to be really careful on how much you emphasize the clove in your mashing schedule, and realizing that Americans do not like the clove flavor in their beer. So that's why legendary Belgian beers are vanishing from the scene in America. People are just liking their IPAs. You know, think about the importers that used to import all the Belgian beers. I think it's the Johnson Brothers. They went out of business. Think about the Spencer Trappist Brewery up in New York. They went out of business. Great breweries like Omegang, owned by Duvel up there in New York. You don't see their beers around anywhere. They're doing all the Belgians. Guys like Firestone Walker were doing a bunch of the Belgians. Now they're just focusing on their IPAs. Okay, even Wicked Weed, who was bought by Anheuser-Busch, they started out with a lot of Belgian styles. All they do is pernicious now. So it's like you look at
just dumping it
well,
right now.
I mean, the truth is that if you want to do Belgian styles, you're not going to sell much beer.
Or
unfortunately,
you got to put it in a 16-ounce can.
So back to the wit beer, right? To put that back out in the market again, what we'll do is we will kind of downplay or turn down on the, imagine if you're the brewer and you have these different knobs, we'll turn down that clove flavor, okay? And we'll kind of bring a cleaner fermentation profile in there to make it more suitable for putting out and just making it crushable. So like a 4.4% wheat beer with a citrus punch is what you're looking at.
The
Nice and easy drinking.
The first test batch was very good, very drinkable for a wit beer.
So of course we can't call it our Belgian white anymore. What do you want to call it?
Well, you and I have already talked about it, and we've talked to some of our better customers and people. Joe and I really get along with our wholesalers, so we tend to ask them, I'd say, more questions than they want to answer. What do you say? But we're thinking about calling it New Dawn, just because it's a new beer. It is.
I love that name.
A new version of a beer we've been doing forever that's just super traditional. And like you said, for some people, let me tell you, our whole entire brew staff was upset when we said we were taking flavor out of the beer.
Well, I think it's more of a rebalancing.
Okay.
Right. So
yeah, that's a good way to sell it.
Yeah, I would say rebalance.
Yeah, I like that.
I wouldn't even say, I'm not trying to sell it. I'm just saying, if the brewers have a palate and you're thinking about how you want to design the overall profile of this, you turn down the clove, turn up the citrus, and that's what Blue Moon did. I mean, and their sweetness is up too. That beer is crazy sweet. It tastes like orange juice almost to me.
So the question I have for you, and
we're not going that far, by the way, guys.
Are we going to be able to keep both of them? I mean, we'll push one commercially.
I think so. Okay. We'll keep one in the tap room.
All right. So we'll be able to keep our traditional, boring, too much flavor wit beer in our tap room, and then we'll push an easier to drink. I will say, just bringing the body down a little bit on the last version made it much easier to drink. Obviously, yeah, we're in the Southeast. Who doesn't like a little more citrusy in their beer? So it should be good. But we don't really have a launch date for that. And again, Joe and I have been doing this for 10 years now. I don't think we've ever made a beer and just released it. I still always use the High Creek as an example. There was probably 6 or 7 versions of that before it made it to a can. And what version are we on right now of wit beer? I think we're on the 3rd.
Yeah, we've done so many trials.
Not counting all the hot dog water days, though.
So, I mean, it's hard to say because we'll take the individual ingredients and steep them in hot water and get an idea what the flavor is, or combine some of those ingredients and get an idea what the flavor is on its own before we spend the money to do any sort of scale production batch. So it's an understanding. I think being a good brewer is understanding the ingredients you're using quality ingredients, understanding how they interplay. I mean, you remember when we used to do the mash test. So they're called Congress mash. You take the grain on a small scale, steep it in the thermos, and then make a tea out of it, and you can get an idea what the raw wort would taste like, which gives you a picture of what's going to look like in the finished beer too. So there's a lot of, I tell the brewers back there all the time, when you're producing the beer, the best guard we have, you're the first line of defense on the quality front. You should be tasting the water, you should be tasting the grain, you should be tasting the hops, taste everything or smell everything, crush the grains in your mouth, taste it on the way to the filter from one tank to another tank, taste the fermentation. I'm not saying a lot, just enough to get a feel for what each part of the process tastes like. So for instance, they do a ton of construction here in Charlotte. It's one of the fastest growing cities, right? So I can tell you at least a half a dozen times in this area, they've busted a water line somewhere. And when they do that, the Carolina clay seeps into the water. And then when we're going to make beer, you can see it muddy looking or chalky tasting or something tasting different about the water. And we'll stop production and say, hey, we need to wait until this gets cleaned up and then change our filter media and then go from there.
There's so many variables.
Keeping an eye on the water. Okay. And then the profile of the water changes from month to month.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't realize that either. So once a quarter, okay.
Well, I don't know that, but you know that. That's
sure.
What's important.
Once a quarter, we'll send it out to the lab. And Charlotte water is great too because the breweries are fantastic water customers. So what they'll do is they'll post the brewing water profile right on their website, and you can go get that. So That gives you an idea about your alkalinity. And
Back to all the different variables. I remember we were doing Dr. Bill Simpson's class.
love to have him on the podcast someday.
He is coming on the podcast. So is his daughter, and they are phenomenal. They're experts, and they are phenomenal tasters. But I remember going through that class, and Bill had the whole entire class go outside and smell. And on that particular day, and by the way, if you're not familiar with this class, it's like 5 days, 40 samples a day.
Practical beer tasting.
Practical beer tasting, and then parts per million contamination until you can pick up on the products, the products' imperfections. But I remembered on that particular day we went out there, and didn't we used to have like a electric motor company down the street, and it smelled like metal in the air, like metallic?
Yeah, there was a phenolic, I forget the name of the compound, but Bill recognized it.
And Bill was like, hey, that could end up in your beer.
Yeah, so some of these things are super pervasive.
Yes.
Just a little bit of it exposed even across the street can come in through the glass, or through the vents and get into the beer. So,
and anybody that's tried to label on a humid day, that's another problem too. Just because the perspiration building up on the can. I'm glad I nailed that perspiration on the first go around there filming live. But it's incredible how many things go into making sure.
Remember what we told him about the chocolate? Do you remember the chocolate story?
Oh, from Pete?
From Bill. No, where if you want to get an idea, here's a little trick. If you want to get an idea what the environment in your brewery is doing to the flavor of your beer, you can hang a kilo of white chocolate in the brewery and just hang it there. And after a week or two, take a nibble of that white chocolate and see how it tastes, and it's going to pick up all the aromas in the air. So, there's definitely character from the environment getting into your beer.
And I tell you what, my oldest son Brady can tell you, because he'll drink a glass of milk and I'll tell him, don't pour all that milk. And then I make him put it back in the refrigerator. And when he comes home for dinner, I make him drink it, and he hates it every time because he's got the broccoli must in it and he's got all the other refrigerator must in it,
That's why you don't freeze your glass in the freezer.
I can't.
God knows what's in there.
It doesn't matter anymore. I can't say anything to people because of you, your depth of knowledge, people do not give a shit. They look at me like I'm crazy. I'll go, hey, can I have a glass not in the refrigerator? And they're going, what are you, just trying to be a difficult customer right now? And you're like, no, but what you don't realize is that you guys actually haven't cleaned your refrigerators in a while. There is a moldy flavor within this pint glass. And as that frostiness that you think is so good melts away, all I'm getting is black mold flavor in my beer. And they're just like, all right, you can go drink somewhere else.
So what I want is a beer clean glass, okay? And then I want the bartender to rinse it before I get that glass. And then even if it's been sitting on the shelf, it's been rinsed and all whatever's been, the aromas are out, and now I can get a true good pour. And I want the pour from a draft line that's been cleaned in the last month, preferably 2 weeks, okay? And that's what I want.
Yeah, look, again, Charlotte, very dense with a good craft beer. I would love to hear in the comments if your particular area cleans draft lines that often, because I remember that became a thing in Charlotte. And then a company, Crafty Beer Guys, popped up. And then all of a sudden, it was a thing. One of my favorite people to watch now, you turned me on, is the guy that always posts these horrible draft line photos.
Oh, shout out to Neil Whitty from the Cicerone program. He's got, I believe his company is called Draft Star. And what he's trying to do is put a shield or like a sticker or something on your favorite establishment's place to say, hey, they've been certified as a establishment that takes care of their draft equipment. So you're getting clean, quality beer out of the draft line. Because how many times you go in a place, they do not touch their draft lines. It's disgusting. and they pour your beer out of it. They dunk their glass in it. It's gross.
I remember 10 years ago, you and I would get calls all the time about what people would blame on us, but it was all draft line problems.
Well, here's one that happens all the time. Let's say you get a phone call and they say, hey, your beer's overcarbonated.
Yeah.
Actually, at an unnamed place in Greensboro, I will say, I was traveling up there for the Navy, okay? And this woman was the bar manager, and she was new, and she was trying her best, okay? And I walked by, and she was struggling with the keg to take the coupler off. And what happened is she had the coupler engaged.
Yeah, okay.
Okay? And never disengaged the coupler, and then twisted it, and it just shot beer all over her face, all over the floor, everywhere.
Yeah, I hear you.
And I was like, whoa, whoa. Before she did, I said, whoa, whoa. I yelled at her from by the bar. I was like, you need to disengage. And then it was everywhere. So there wasn't any customers really there. I ran behind the bar and disengaged it for her because she had a rag. She grabbed a rag, and it was just, all her beer was just spewing out everywhere. And we put the rag on it. Okay, and I disengaged everything to stop it, and I said, hey, let me show you something if you don't mind. And she doesn't know me from anything, right? And I said, look, if you push this down, that little probe comes out, and that's what pushes the ball, and that's where the beer will spray in your face. So you have to lift this up so that it goes. So I get to talking to her, and she's like, oh, it's just been so rough back here, I get the kegs in and I can't get it to pour right. It comes out 1,000,000 miles an hour. It's all foam. And I'm like, would you mind if I looked at it? I said, I'm in the beer business. And she says, sure. Come on back and look at it. So I look at it. They have a normal, like behind the counter draft box.
Okay.
Okay. And it's a big one, draft box.
It's hot as shit.
And the pressure on that, they should be set at around, for a behind the counter draft box, it should be like 11 to 12 PSI, was like 30 PSI, way up there. And it's not a high volume place. So if you put 30 PSI on this beer for a week,
draft line that short too,
a week, it's going to push that CO2 into the beer, and you're getting overcarbonated beer. That's one problem, okay? Because equilibrium, is around 12 PSI on one of those.
It's hard to nail the big words live.
It's different depending on what your draft system is. That's called balancing the draft system.
That's an easy problem.
Anyway,
We've been called with big problems before.
Well, hold on. So the pressure was off, okay? And no big deal, right? I adjusted it, and then, okay, a little tip for all you people that have a bar. You should be able to fill a pint glass up, okay, 16 ounces in 8 seconds. So if you time it and it's
Are you serious?
Yeah, and it's 8 seconds, that's the right speed. If you fill it up in 1 second, you got the pressure too high. 2 seconds, too high, 3 high, whatever. 8 seconds. So it's 2 ounces per second is what the math is.
Is that something that you and your other Master Cicerone buds made up, or is that a real thing?
We'll ask Neil. He's really the expert. So this information comes from the Brewers Association Draft Beer Quality Manual.
All right.
Okay, and these are the people that are industry experts that put out guidelines and standards for operating your draft system. So the standard is 2 ounces per second. So if you time it, you should be able to fill the pint glass up, which is 16 ounces in 8 seconds. So just divide by 2, and that's what it should be. Anyway.
Hang on, you better be right with that, because I'm going to cut that out, turn that into a 30-second, and we're putting that on social media.
It's true.
That's a short.
Yeah, it's true.
That's a really good way, because people always ask pressure, temperature of keg. They ask a million things. If you can just tell them, hey, if you're filling plus or minus 8 seconds, then you got a problem.
Should be about 8 seconds, right?
Another problem too is the seals. I've found seals on those coffin coolers like you're talking about. When the seals are bad, it's never cold inside. So cold escapes outside of the refrigerator through the bad seals. People think it's closed and like it'll be completely rotted out. And you're going, hey, listen, you got to hang a temperature gauge inside this thing because it's actually like 49 degrees in here.
Yeah, I mean, there's a million things that are common, like, so the temperature of the beer is critical too, okay? You have to have the beer at around 36 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what it's designed to be served at, okay? For most breweries on a production scale. You can adjust this in your own place if you have a special tap room or setup to change the temperatures for your beer, but for the most part in America, 36 degrees. So if you get this woman at the establishment in Greensboro, okay, I feel the keg and it's warm to the touch, okay, on top of it. And I said, well, even if you had the pressure right, okay, and you have a warm to the touch keg, okay, you're going to have all foam come out of there because the CO2 is going to be out. And I said, where are you storing the kegs? And she's like, in that closet there. And in the closet, it's like 90 degrees. So when you get the keg from the distributor, it's got to go in the cold room overnight, and then you put it on the next day when it's chilled down. Okay. Even if you're cleaning the lines or doing something and you open the cold room and it lets that cold air out, even a few degrees, 40 degrees, 42 degrees is going to give you all foam. And if you're the bar manager, you're going to waste money and pour those profits down the drain. So take a little time, cool your keg down to 36 degrees, then put it on, make sure you have the right pressure, pull it, and then make sure you get 2 ounces per second. That should be roughly where you are. Now, every draft system is different on the pressure. You have to have it balanced, like I said, but those are very common things. Now, under the counter draft box, what you'll see a lot of times is the tower itself isn't cooled. That's out here, in the draft boxes down below. Okay, so a lot of these draft boxes have a hose that comes from the fan that blows cold air up in the tower. And there's like a little coat hanger thing in there. You got to shove that hose up into the tower. That way it cools the lines going to the customer. Otherwise, you're going to get cold beer, warm beer, cold beer, right? And then when you do that, you'll watch it come out, and it's going to be beer foam, and and you're wasting money. So it's in your best interest, if you're an owner, to understand how these work, because you're just going to pour profits down the drain. You want to have a good, clean, crisp pour every time so you can make the most money, and it improves the experience for the guest. So if anybody needs help with that in the area, I'm glad to come out and do some training for the staff or the owners or whoever needs some help understanding how their system works.
Let's just make sure that they know how to use a coupler and don't store their beer in a f***ing hot closet before they call you. Like, they need to have that stuff under control before.
Well, they'll call us and say, hey, your beer is overcarbonated. It's the only one that's overcarbonated on draft. And you're like, okay, so all the other ones pouring fine and it's just Sugar Creek beer?
We do have very good carbonation in our beer. We tend to keep it.
I like to keep it on the higher end, for sure.
And it's better that way.
But the point I'm making is that if you kept our keg in the closet and then hooked it up, it's going to be the only one on draft that's foaming if the other ones are cold. So take a gun and check the temperature. Actually, you can, when it comes out of the pint, even if it's foam, if it comes out, goes into the pint, out of the faucet into the pint, you can put a thermometer in it and say, okay, what's the temperature? Is this one warmer than all the other ones coming out? If it is, then it's going to be foamy.
So remember the issue we had, one of our wholesalers, and look, we love all of our wholesalers, and I love it when they need us. But remember when one of our wholesalers called us and said, hey, we need your help. All of the kegs that we put on this establishment are overcarbonated. We don't know what the problem is. Can you help us? Do you remember that one? Wasn't that his temperature got too cold or pressure got too high?
Man, I've seen everything. I've seen it where the
entire cooler was over foaming, and that's when we were.
Oh, they said the whole cooler?
Yeah, remember that? I don't want to. We're mic'd up right now, but I don't want to say where. But at one point, Greg called us, not our Greg, the other Greg.
Sure.
And he said, hey, I really need your help. And then you and I sat there on the dry erase board trying to talk about the length of the line. And it was a new pizza restaurant that basically just opened, new cooler, new everything. And the owner called up and said, all of your kegs are over-carbonated. They're foaming like crazy. And I think we boiled it down to the only thing that the customer admitted was that his cooler dropped down to 30 for like 3 days because there was nothing in it. And then the beer went in. And then we think that the gas was turned up way too much.
Yeah, so what'll happen is a new bar owner won't have it in their budget to put in the gas lines for their beer for whatever reason, because they didn't think of it, right? So they'll ask the soda supplier, Coca-Cola or Pepsi, to come in and run lines, CO2 lines, and they'll get a contract for the soda. Soda has a very high carbonation compared to beer, a lot higher. So they set the carbonation lines for the soda and then just run it to the beer full blast, and you get the beer ice cold down to 30, which makes it more soluble for CO2. Put that soda pressure on it. Now, bingo, all your beer's overcarbonated.
All right.
That's one thing that happens. I mean,
I feel like we should do a Q&A podcast one day. Like,
Yeah.
hey, send us all your questions, even if, hey, there's no such thing as a stupid question. But I mean, it sounds like you could help a lot of people.
well, listen, another one that happens. Say you do care about your draft line and you hire a professional to come in to clean your draft line. The professional comes in to do that line cleaning, uses a wrench, and then twist the line in the back. Okay, now there's a bunch of lines that are coming out of the faucet, and this one gets twisted. When the elbow on the back gets twisted, it'll pinch that line or the other one, and you'll get a kink in it. Okay, so now all of a sudden, you have that line which was straight, and it's kinked like that, and the flow is still coming out, but coming out really slow. So what do? They crank the pressure up to force it to come out a little faster because it's just dribbling out. And then they're overcarbonating the keg, number one. They're forcing it out the kink, and it runs into that kink and just decarbonates the whole time, and it's a nightmare, okay? I've seen that happen a lot.
Because you're trying to force all the fluid through a smaller hole.
Yeah, you can't kink the line and expect it to stay perfect and
I remember Burger Bar downtown had the same problem forever. The same professionals came out. We finally went down there and then looked down the actual draft tower, and they had crimped that thing so tight that the line in there had twisted over on itself.
Yeah.
And I mean,
another thing that happens a lot, and we saw this one in was it in Charleston? I think it was in Charleston, where we came in there and they're like, none of the beers on this side are pouring, so we're out. Like, I ordered one and said, hey, can I get a Big O? It was on the right side. And they're like, oh, those aren't pouring now. I said, what do you mean they're not pouring? Why aren't they pouring? They're like, it's just not working. Like, okay, do you know why? And then I said, do you mind if I take a look? So I went back and looked, and what happens is the gas, which they use to push the beer, in this case it was nitrogen CO2 blend, they have a gauge on the bottle, right? Well, depending on where it is, people bump into this thing and then knock the bottle over. And when they knock the bottle over, it smashes the gauge. It happens all the time, especially on jockey boxes. And the gauge needle was stuck, showing that it was actually full, okay, because they had smashed the gauge. But the gas bottle was empty. Yeah. So I said, all right, let's take the gauge off, because I could see it was smashed. We got a wrench. It was stripped. Take the gauge off and then open the bottle and see if any gas comes out, and nothing came out. I said, you guys need to switch the bottle. Switch the bottle, boom, everything pours. So it's just that, unfortunately, people in this industry, bar managers or beer servers, they just don't get the training they need to do the job right when it comes to the draft system. And I guess you could call this I don't get anything for this, neither do you, but this would be a reason why Ray Daniels started Cicerone program, to help educate people in this industry on how to care and handle for beer. And then I guess, a good point we talked about before this started is there's been a change in hands on the Cicerone program.
Yeah, congratulations.
Congrats to the new guys. Their two master Cicerones bought the company from Ray, so they'll be breathing some life into it, hopefully, and continuing their mission of educating people on what makes great beer and how to serve great beer and handle great beer and become a good taster. So.
All right, so real quick, let's cover this off. And then I'm going to chop this thing up with our entire videography team. All right, start to finish. If you were talking to a bar manager right now in 30 seconds, because that's the perfect short, what should their PSI be? What should the temperature in the cooler be? And then what should they do to make sure that beer is always pouring?
Okay, there's no telling what their PSI should be. They should get a professional to set it and then don't mess it up. Keep it there because it's different from system to system.
But roughly it should be between.
No, there is no roughly,
All right.
unfortunately.
All right.
So I wouldn't, that's the last thing to adjust is the pressure. Have a professional do it because it's unique to your system.
Got it.
That's number one. The most important thing the bar manager can do is to make sure that the keg, before they put it on, is at the proper temperature. It needs to be cold. Put a cold keg on. That's the most important thing. Most of the problems come from the keg not being chilled down. That's the most important thing. If you suspect there's a pressure problem, then you can always put a pint glass under and time it. It should fill a pint glass up in 8 seconds. If it's filling it up in 4, your pressure is likely too high. Okay. If it's filling it up in 12, it's likely too low. 8 is the sweet spot, so it should be good. That's one way you can kind of get an idea if you don't have the knowledge to adjust the pressure properly, right? Because some establishments even have pumps. Some are serving from bright tanks. Some are serving with gas blend, nitrogen, CO2, all that kind of stuff, right? And the next big thing the bar manager can do is make sure that they clean the lines every 2 weeks. To keep the bacteria out of the lines, keep a fresh one for their patrons, right? That's another really great thing to do. And then even the basics, right? Knowing how to put the coupler on, engage it, take the coupler off, and disengage it is really important. Inspecting your coupler to make sure that the seals are good on that. Sometimes the rubber on the bottom of the coupler will get dried out or corroded, and that'll cause a problem. A thing I see all the time too is with the fobs. If you're a good establishment and you have a fob, that's a foam on beer device, which saves the bar manager money. You should have a fob if you don't get one. Okay. A lot of times the staff is new and they're hired. They don't know how to adjust the fob or well,
that's important because I know most bar managers are set on poor cost bonus.
Yes.
And when they realize that the fob, just a simple switch, saves a lot, that's a big deal.
One thing you can do, which I'd be curious to do even here, is the tray that catches the beer. So you pour the draft and there's a tray there, okay, that catches the beer that spills over. You can take the hose, the drain, which normally goes to the drain, and divert it to a 5-gallon bucket. So you capture it all.
We used to do this.
Yeah, and then you can see how much beer they're really wasting and measure that. And then at the end of the night, you can say, hey, look, this is 5 gallons of beer you guys wasted from not pouring right. And you realize how much money you're losing. Think about that.
That's crazy. I mean, we did it for a while. You're right. And it was mainly when we used to run the growler counter pressure filler, right?
Yeah.
The foam would go into that and we would see a lot of that.
Yeah.
That's a good trick.
Yeah. So you can run into a bucket. I would encourage the owners to do that, and you can see how much money you're flushing down the drain. Listen, beer might be the last thing on your mind because you're trying to plug the gap in the kitchen. Your kitchen cook didn't show up. Your food delivery was short a few items, which happens every single week, right? You had an electrical issue. The air condition isn't working right. You have an angry customer in here, whatever. You're dealing with a million things, and the last thing you want to worry about is your draft line. But your draft sales are one of your most profitable areas of the bar or restaurant. You should have that thing tuned and set right and trained right so you can make the most money for your establishment. It's very profitable.
It's a very good point.
So,
I mean, you're buying a keg for 150, 170, and you're pulling 500, 600.
Simple math. There's 100 pints, right? And you're going to sell it for, they're going to buy it for $170, right? So that's 1.7 or $1.70 per pint on the cost for the restaurant, or maybe $1.80. And they're selling it for what? $9?
I don't know if I want to divulge this information. I don't know if the consumer needs to know how much the restaurants are making.
No, you look like there's a lot of other costs besides.
You're right.
There's a lot of other costs, right?
You're right.
Besides that, so.
But you're right.
I mean, I'm glad to show our P&L, and you'll see how thin the margin is. So we need that high gross margin on the beer sales just to keep the lights on, because it's so hard to get it to that point. But the point is that a lot of times it's overlooked area, and there's some basic things they can do. Make sure you have a full gas bottle. Okay, make sure the beer's at the right temperature. You don't have a kinked line. Okay, and make sure it's coming out at the right speed, and you should be good. The biggest thing is to cool the keg. Use a clean glass. Okay, side note. This is something unique, and I'd love to hear from our viewers on this.
All right.
Most of the education out there will say that if you pour a beer into the glass, okay, and you get a lot of clinging bubbles on the side, the clinging bubbles, there's none on this one, are dirty spots where you've had dust collect inside the glass or dirt or grime, then you pour, and that nucleates the carbon dioxide in the beer, and now you can see, oh, I have an oily, dirty glass. They didn't take care of it. That's gross, right? Well, there's another thing too, which is interesting. The glass itself, when it goes into the mold, isn't completely smooth. It has rough spots on the glass. So what knowledgeable bartenders will do is rinse the glass well, and then turn it upside down and all the water drains out. And now you have a very microscopic thin coat of water on the whole entire glass. And that fills in those microscopic rough spots. So you get a good, clear presentation. And so there's been some argument that it's not necessarily dirt. It could be just the roughness in the glass itself that's giving that. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard that, and I would love to know your opinion.
Well, the thing is, I noticed hanging out with you and all your Master Cicerone buddies, the knowledge just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. If there's a why or a what, it's getting figured out, and that's a good point.
Well, that's the beer industry in itself. It drives technological change.
Yeah,
it's awesome.
That's America for you, We and that's also why you can't find your Belgian beers just sitting on every shelf anymore, because the local guy is putting out phenomenal beer and it's on that shelf. It's pretty interesting.
Well, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in today and listening to our show. Lots of cool stuff going on at the brewery like usual. Hope that next time that we tune in, we'll have a guest like Dr. Bill Simpson or somebody else from the industry, which is exciting.
Or maybe we could test some smash burgers.
That'd be awesome. Maybe we can bring that on camera.
How about a live test of smash burgers? Joe and I are talking about doing a lot of remodels at the brewery for our 10-year anniversary. Nashville hot chicken and smash burgers are something that we're talking about adding to the restaurant. So that'd be fun.
Well, I like a smash burger too, but anyway, thanks so much for tuning in. I hope to see you guys on the next one. And if you learned something, please let us know in the comments. And thank you so much for liking and subscribing to our podcast. Cheers.